Willa Harper had seen the desperate faces of countless men through the haze of cigar smoke. But the cowboy who walked through the doors of the Golden Rose Dance Hall on that sweltering August evening in 1883 carried something different in his eyes, a wounded honesty that made her heart stutter despite her best efforts to keep it locked away. She stood on the small raised platform at the back of the saloon in Yuma, Arizona Territory, her crimson dress tight at the waist and fanning out in layers of ruffled fabric that swished when she moved. The piano player struck up another tune, and Willa forced her practiced smile as she descended the stairs, her hand trailing along the worn wooden railing. The Golden Rose was not the worst establishment she could have ended up in, but it was still a cage, and she had been trapped within its walls for 3 long years. "Evening, sweetheart," called out a grizzled miner, his breath reeking of whiskey as he reached for her waist. Willa sidestepped him with the ease of long practice, her smile never faltering. "Now, Tommy, you know the rules. Buy a drink first, then we can talk about a dance." The miner grumbled but shuffled toward the bar, and Willa released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Her eyes drifted back to the cowboy standing near the entrance. He was tall, with sun-darkened skin, and hair the color of wheat left too long in the fields. His hat was pushed back slightly, revealing a strong brow and those eyes that had caught her attention, a deep brown that reminded her of the earth after rain. He did not move toward the bar like most men did. Instead, he stood there, seeming almost uncomfortable in the rowdy atmosphere of the dance hall. His clothes were dusty from travel, his worn boots showing signs of hard use. A working cowboy, then, not one of the wealthy ranchers who sometimes came to town looking for entertainment. Me, one of the other dance hall girls, sidled up to Willa with a knowing look. "That one is new, tall drink of water, is he not?" "I had not noticed," Willa lied, though her attention kept drifting back to him. "Sure you had not?" "Well, if you are not interested, I might just know," Willa said, perhaps too quickly. She cleared her throat. "I mean, let me greet him. New customers are my specialty, remember?" Me laughed, a sound that was both weary and amused. "Whatever you say, Willa, but be careful with that one." "He looks like trouble." Willa did not disagree. She smoothed down her dress and made her way across the crowded floor, dodging dancing couples and men who tried to catch her attention. As she approached the cowboy, she noticed the way his jaw was set, the tension in his shoulders. He looked like a man carrying the weight of something heavy. "Welcome to the Golden Rose," she said, pitching her voice to carry over the noise. "First time in Yuma." He turned to face her fully, and up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. He was young still, perhaps 25 or so, only a few years older than her own 22 years. "Just passing through," he said, his voice low and rough like gravel underfoot. "Looking for work, actually. Heard there might be some ranches hiring hands." Willa nodded. "The Remington Ranch, about 10 miles north. They are always looking for good cowboys, especially this time of year with the roundup coming." He studied her for a moment, and she felt oddly exposed under his gaze, as though he could see past the rouge on her cheeks and the practiced warmth in her smile. "Thank you. That is helpful." An awkward silence stretched between them, broken only by the cacophony of the saloon around them. Willa was about to excuse herself when he spoke again. "I am Owen," he said. "Owen Mallory." "Willa," she replied, leaving off her last name as she always did. The girls at the Golden Rose were encouraged to maintain some mystery. "Would you like to buy a drink, or perhaps a dance?" Owen glanced around the saloon, his expression uncertain. "I do not have much money to spare, truth be told. I probably should not have come in at all." His honesty surprised her. Most men lied about their circumstances, either inflating their importance or hiding their poverty behind false bravado. "Then why did you?" He met her eyes again, and she saw something raw there. "Been on the trail for 2 weeks straight." Sometimes a man just needs to be around people, even if he cannot afford their company. Willa felt something crack in her chest, a small fissure in the walls she had built so carefully. "The first dance is free," she heard herself say, though it absolutely was not. Madame Celeste, who owned the Golden Rose, would be furious if she found out. Owen's eyebrows rose. "That is kind of you, but I insist," Willa said, holding out her hand. "Consider it a welcome to Yuma." After a moment's hesitation, Owen took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip gentle despite the obvious strength in his fingers. Willa led him to the dance floor as the piano player transitioned into a slower waltz. Other couples swayed around them, some graceful, others stumbling with drink. Owen placed his hand on her waist with an almost tentative touch, as though he was afraid he might break her. They began to move, and Willa was surprised to find that he was a competent dancer, leading her through the steps with easy confidence. "Where did a cowboy learn to waltz?" she asked, genuine curiosity coloring her voice. "My mother insisted," Owen said, and she heard the fondness in his tone. "Said that a man should know how to treat a lady properly, even if he spent most of his time with cattle and horses." She sounds like a wise woman. She was. The past tense hung heavy between them. "She passed 2 years ago. Fever took her." "I am sorry," Willa said softly, and she meant it. They danced in silence for a while, and Willa found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did with customers. There was something solid about Owen, something that made her feel safe despite barely knowing him. It was a dangerous feeling, one she knew better than to trust. "What about you?" Owen asked. "How does a woman end up working in a place like this?" The question was not unkind, but it still stung. Willa kept her expression neutral. "The same way most women do, few choices and bad luck." "I did not mean to offend, you did not," Willa interrupted. "It is just not a story I share with strangers." "Fair enough." Owen was quiet for a moment, then added, "For what it is worth, you seem like you deserve better than this." Willa stumbled slightly, caught off guard by his words. Owen steadied her immediately, his hand firm on her back. She looked up at him, searching for mockery or pity in his expression, but found only sincerity. "You do not know anything about me," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "I know enough," Owen replied. "I can see it in your eyes. You are not meant for this life." Before Willa could respond, a heavy hand clamped down on Owen's shoulder, jerking him backward. The dance ended abruptly as Frank Sullivan, one of Madame Celeste's enforcers, glared at them both. "No free dances," Frank growled. "Pay up or get out." Owen's expression hardened. "The lady said the first dance was complimentary." "The lady does not make the rules," Frank said, his fingers digging into Owen's shoulder. "That will be $2. $2 was an outrageous price, double what a dance normally cost. Frank was trying to squeeze Owen to humiliate him. Willa felt anger flare in her chest. "Frank, I told him it was free as a promotion," Willa said quickly. "To bring in new customers." "Madame Celeste did not authorize any promotions," Frank replied, not taking his eyes off Owen. $2, cowboy, or I will toss you out on your ear." Willa saw Owen's jaw clench, saw the way his hands curled into fists. For a moment, she thought he might actually take a swing at Frank, which would have been disastrous. Frank was built like a bull and had a reputation for cruelty. "It is fine," Willa said, stepping between them. "I will pay the $2 from my earnings." "Like hell you will," Owen said, his voice tight. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather pouch. Slowly, deliberately, he counted out $2 in coins and placed them in Frank's outstretched palm. "There. Now get your hand off me." Frank released him with a shove that sent Owen stumbling back a step. "Enjoy your dance, cowboy. And remember, everything costs money at the Golden Rose." As Frank stalked away, Willa felt sick to her stomach. $2 was probably most of what Owen had to his name, and he had just spent it on a single dance because of her impulsive offer. "Owen, I am so sorry," she began, but he cut her off with a shake of his head. "Not your fault. Men like that are the same everywhere." He straightened his hat and gave her a small, sad smile. "Thank you for the dance, Willa. It was worth every penny." He turned to leave, and Willa felt a sudden, desperate urge to stop him. "Wait," she called out. Owen paused, looking back at her. "The Remington Ranch." "Ask for Samuel Remington himself, not his foreman. Tell him you are looking for honest work and that you are willing to start at the bottom. He respects that." Owen's expression softened. "Thank you. Maybe I will see you around, Willa Harper." He had used her full name, though she had not given it to him. It should have bothered her, but instead it felt intimate, like a secret shared between them. "Maybe," she said, though she did not believe it. Men like Owen did not come back to places like the Golden Rose unless they had to. She watched him walk out into the night, and then Madame Celeste's sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "Willa, get back to work. We have paying customers waiting." Willa turned away from the door and plastered her smile back on, but something had shifted inside her. For the first time in 3 years, she had felt like a person rather than a commodity, and Owen Mallory had been the one to make her feel that way. The rest of the night passed in a blur of dances and forced laughter. By the time the Golden Rose finally closed its doors at 3 in the morning, Willa was exhausted in body and spirit. She climbed the narrow stairs to the small room she shared with me and collapsed onto her thin mattress without bothering to remove her dress. Me was already asleep in the other bed, snoring softly. Willa stared at the water-stained ceiling and thought about Owen's words. "You are not meant for this life." But what other life was there for her? She was trapped by debt to Madame Celeste, who had paid for her train ticket to Yuma 3 years ago when Willa had been desperate and alone. That debt, with its accumulating interest and the constant charges for room, board, and clothing, seemed to grow rather than shrink no matter how many dances she sold or drinks she convinced men to buy. Sleep came eventually, but it was restless and filled with dreams of open spaces and a pair of brown eyes that saw her as something more than a dance hall girl. The next week passed slowly. Willa went through her routine with mechanical precision, smiling and dancing and pretending that her heart was in it. She found herself watching the door every evening, hoping against hope that Owen might return, but he never did. She told herself it was for the best. Getting attached to anyone was dangerous in her line of work. On Saturday night, the Golden Rose was particularly crowded. A cattle drive had just come through, and the cowboys were eager to spend their pay. Willa was caught in an exhausting rotation of dances, barely getting a moment to catch her breath between partners. Her feet ached in her too tight shoes, and her face hurt from holding her smile. She had just finished a dance with a particularly handsy cowboy when she saw Owen walk through the door. Her heart leaped despite her best efforts to remain indifferent. He looked cleaner than he had the week before, his clothes less dusty, but he still carried that same serious expression. This time, Owen walked directly to the bar and ordered a whiskey. Willa excused herself from her next dance partner with a flimsy excuse and made her way over to him. "You came back," she said, trying to keep her voice casual. Owen turned to her and a genuine smile crossed his face, transforming his features. "I did. Got hired at the Remington Ranch, just like you suggested. Samuel Remington is a fair man, pays decent wages." "That is wonderful," Willa said, and she meant it. "So you are celebrating." Something like that. Owen took a sip of his whiskey, then set the glass down. Actually, I came back to see you. Willa's breath caught. Oh, I have been thinking about what happened last week, about that thug Frank squeezing me for money. Owen's expression grew serious. And I have been thinking about you, stuck working in a place where men like that have power over you. It is not so bad, Willa lied automatically. Do not do that, Owen said gently. Do not pretend with me. I can see that you hate it here. Willa glanced around nervously, making sure no one was listening. Even if I do, what difference does it make? I owe Madame Celeste more money than I will ever be able to repay. I am stuck here. What if you were not? Willa stared at him. What are you talking about? Owen leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. What if someone paid off your debt? What if you could leave? That is impossible, Willa said, shaking her head. The debt is over $500 now. No one has that kind of money to spare. I do not have it yet, Owen admitted. But I will. Samuel Remington has offered me a bonus if I stay through the winter and help with the calving season. Combined with my regular pay, I could have enough in 4 or 5 months. Willa felt tears prick at her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. Why would you do that for me? You barely know me. Because everyone deserves a chance at a better life, Owen said simply. And because when I danced with you, I saw someone who was drowning and doing her best to keep her head above water. I want to throw you a rope. That is the most foolish thing I have ever heard, Willa said, but there was no conviction in her words. You should save your money for yourself. I have everything I need. A job, a place to sleep, food to eat. But you, Willa, you need a way out. Before Willa could respond, Mia appeared at her elbow. Willa, Madame Celeste is looking for you, says you have been spending too much time talking and not enough time dancing. Willa felt the moment slipping away. I have to go, she told Owen. I will come back, he promised, every week until I have enough. Owen, let me do this, he said, his eyes intense. Please. Willa nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Then she turned and hurried away, feeling his gaze on her back. True to his word, Owen returned the following Saturday, and the Saturday after that. He always bought a single whiskey and one dance, refusing to spend more than he had to but making sure Madame Celeste could not complain about him loitering. During those dances, he and Willa talked in hushed tones, learning about each other in stolen moments. She learned that he had grown up on a small farm in Missouri, that his father had died in the war before Owen was born, and that his mother had raised him alone. He had headed west after her death, unable to stay in a place filled with memories. Owen learned that Willa had come from Ohio, that she had been orphaned at 18 when a fire killed her parents and younger brother. With no family and no prospects, she had answered an advertisement for work in the Arizona Territory, only to discover too late that the respectable employment promised was actually a dance hall. By then, she had been in debt and stranded, with no way home. As the weeks turned into months, Willa found herself living for those Saturday nights. Owen became her lifeline, a reminder that there was a world beyond the golden rose. They were falling in love, she realized, in the strangest and most impossible of circumstances. It was late October when Frank Sullivan finally took notice of their weekly meetings. Willa was dancing with Owen, discussing the approaching winter and how the ranch was preparing for it, when Frank's shadow fell over them. You again, Frank said, his lip curling. What is it about you, Cowboy? The golden rose has plenty of girls. Why do you keep coming back to this one? None of your business, Owen said coolly, not breaking stride in their dance. Frank grabbed Owen's shoulder again, just as he had that first night. Everything that happens here is my business. And I think you and Willa are getting a little too friendly. Makes me wonder if you are conducting business outside of Madame Celeste's establishment, if you catch my meaning." Willa felt her face flush. "That is not true, and you know it." "Do I?" Frank's eyes were cold. "Maybe I should have a talk with Madame Celeste about this. See what she thinks. Or maybe you should let go of me and walk away," Owen said, his voice deadly quiet. For a moment, Willa thought Frank would back down. But then the enforcer's hand moved to Owen's collar, yanking him close. "You do not tell me what to do, Cowboy." What happened next occurred so quickly that Willa almost missed it. Owen twisted out of Frank's grip with surprising agility, then delivered a sharp jab to Frank's solar plexus that doubled the bigger man over. Before Frank could recover, Owen had him in a headlock. The saloon went quiet. Everyone was staring. "I do not want any trouble," Owen said calmly, though Willa could see the tension in his arms as he held Frank. "But I will not be bullied. Not by you, not by anyone. Now, I am going to let you go and you are going to walk away. Understood?" Frank wheezed something that might have been agreement. Owen released him and the enforcer stumbled back, red-faced and furious. For a moment, Willa was certain he would attack, but then Madame Celeste's voice rang out. "Frank, my office, now." The madam stood at the top of the stairs, her expression thunderous. Frank shot Owen a venomous look but obeyed, climbing the stairs with his shoulders hunched. Madame Celeste's gaze swept over the saloon. "Show is over. Back to work, everyone." The piano player resumed his tune, and gradually the noise level returned to normal. Owen turned to Willa, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right? You should not have done that," Willa whispered. "Frank will make you pay for embarrassing him. Let him try." Owen took her hands in his. "Willa, I have almost enough saved. Another month, maybe 2 at most. Hold on just a little longer." Willa wanted to believe him, but she had learned not to hope for too much. Hope was dangerous. "What if Madame Celeste will not accept your money? What if she refuses to let me go?" "Then we will find another way," Owen said firmly. "I promise you, Willa, you will not spend another year in this place." His confidence was infectious, and despite her fears, Willa found herself believing him. "You are a good man, Owen Mallory." "I am just a man who cares about you," he replied softly. The moment was interrupted by me, who hurried over with wide eyes. "Willa, Madame Celeste wants to see you in her office." Willa's heart sank. "Now, right now." Owen squeezed her hands once more before releasing her. "I will wait." Willa climbed the stairs on shaking legs. The office door was slightly ajar, and she could hear Madame Celeste and Frank arguing inside. She knocked softly. "Come in," Madame Celeste called. Willa entered to find Frank standing in the corner, still looking furious, while Madame Celeste sat behind her ornate desk. The madam was a woman in her 50s, still beautiful in a hard sort of way, with dark hair piled high on her head and shrewd eyes that missed nothing. "Sit down, Willa," she said, gesturing to a chair. Willa obeyed, folding her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. "Frank tells me that you and a certain cowboy have formed an attachment," Madame Celeste began. "He seems to think that you might be planning to leave my establishment without settling your debt." "I would never do that," Willa said quickly. "I know what I owe." "Good." Madame Celeste leaned back in her chair, studying Willa. "Because I have invested a great deal in you, my dear. The clothes you wear, the food you eat, the roof over your head, all of it comes at a cost, and that cost must be repaid." "I understand." "Do you?" The madam's voice sharpened. "Because it seems to me that you have been spending an unusual amount of time with this Owen Mallory. Time that could be better spent entertaining a wider variety of customers." Willa felt a flash of defiance. "He pays for his dances just like everyone else. 1 dance a week." Madame Celeste shook her head. "You could earn far more from the cattle drivers, the miners, the merchants. Men with money to spend. Instead, you waste your time on a ranch hand with shallow pockets. My earnings have not decreased, Willa pointed out, trying to keep her voice steady, but they have not increased either. Madame Celeste stood and walked around the desk, her silk skirts rustling. Let me be clear, Willa. I run a business, not a charity. If you cannot be profitable, then you are of no use to me. The threat hung in the air. Willa knew what happened to girls who were no longer useful. They were sold to less reputable establishments, places where women disappeared and no one asked questions. I will work harder, Willa said. I will increase my earnings. See that you do. Madame Celeste returned to her seat. And Willa, if this cowboy of yours is entertaining notions of paying off your debt, you can tell him not to bother. I have decided that your contract is not for sale. You belong to the Golden Rose for as long as I see fit. The words hit Willa like a physical blow, but that is not legal. If the debt is paid, the debt will never be paid, Madame Celeste interrupted coldly. There are always additional expenses, additional charges. I could keep you here for the rest of your life if I chose to, and no one would stop me. Do you understand? Willa understood perfectly. She was not just trapped, she was a prisoner with a sentence that would never end. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of the madam. Yes, she whispered. I understand. Good, now get back to work. Willa fled the office, her vision blurred with unshed tears. She made it down the stairs and out the back door into the alley behind the saloon before she finally let herself cry. Great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. She had been a fool to hope, a fool to believe that someone like Owen could save her. She did not hear him approach until his arms wrapped around her, pulling her against his chest. Willa, what happened? She will not let me go, Willa sobbed into his shirt. Even if you pay the debt, she will not release me. She said my contract is not for sale. Owen's arms tightened around her. That is not legal. It does not matter what is legal out here. Madame Celeste has connections, powerful men who owe her favors. She can do whatever she wants. No, Owen said firmly. No, she cannot. We will find a way, Willa, I promise you. There is no way, Willa said bitterly. I am stuck here until I am too old or too sick to be useful, and then she will throw me out to starve. Owen pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. Look at me. She did, seeing the fierce determination in his eyes. I am not giving up on you, do you hear me? We will find a way out of this, even if we have to bend a few rules to do it. What are you saying? I am saying that if Madame Celeste will not let you go willingly, then maybe you leave unwillingly. Willa's eyes widened. You mean run away? Owen, she will come after me. She will find me and drag me back, or worse. Not if you disappear completely. Not if you go somewhere she cannot reach you. Where would I go? I have no money, no skills beyond dancing and pouring drinks. You would come with me, Owen said simply. I have enough saved now to get us out of Arizona territory. We could go to California or up to Colorado, somewhere far away where Madame Celeste's influence does not reach. Willa wanted to believe him, but fear held her back. If we are caught, we will not be, Owen interrupted. But Willa, you have to decide. You can stay here and spend the rest of your life as a prisoner, or you can take a chance on freedom. It is your choice. Willa thought about the 3 years she had already spent at the Golden Rose, the countless nights of fake smiles and unwanted touches. She thought about the future that awaited her if she stayed decades of the same, growing older and more desperate until she was finally cast aside. And then she thought about Owen, about the way he looked at her like she was something precious, about the life they could have together if she was brave enough to reach for it. When? She asked. Owen's face broke into a relieved smile. Tonight. Right now, if you can manage it. I need to get my things. I have some money hidden in my room and a few items I cannot leave behind. "Be quick," Owen said. "I will get my horse from the livery and meet you at the edge of town, near the old mission. Can you make it there without being seen?" Willa nodded, adrenaline beginning to override her fear. "Yes, give me 20 minutes. If you are not there in 30, I am coming back for you," Owen said. He pressed a quick, hard kiss to her forehead. "Be careful." Willa slipped back into the Golden Rose through the rear entrance. The saloon was still crowded, and no one paid attention to her as she climbed the stairs to her room. Me was not there, which was fortunate. Willa pulled her battered carpet bag from under the bed and began stuffing it with her few possessions, a change of clothes, a photograph of her family, the small amount of money she had managed to save by skipping meals. She was reaching for her mother's locket, the only piece of jewelry she owned that had actual sentimental value, when the door opened. Me stood in the doorway, taking in the scene with wide eyes. "Willa, what are you doing?" Willa froze. "Me, please do not say anything." Me closed the door quickly behind her. "You are leaving, are you not? With that cowboy?" There was no point in denying it. "Yes. Madame Celeste will be furious. She will send Frank after you, I know." Willa clasped the locket around her neck with shaking fingers. "But I cannot stay here anymore, Me. I will not." Me was quiet for a long moment, and then she crossed to her own bed and pulled out a small leather purse from beneath the mattress. "Take this." "Me, I cannot." "Yes, you can." Me pressed the purse into Willa's hands. "There is about $40 in there. It is all I have, but it might help you and your cowboy get wherever you are going." Willa felt tears spill down her cheeks again. "Me, I cannot take your savings." "You can and you will." Me's own eyes were wet. "One of us should get out of here, Willa. One of us deserves a chance at a real life. Now go before someone else comes." Willa hugged her friend tightly. "Thank you for everything." "Go," Me repeated, pushing her toward the door. "And Willa, be happy." Willa slipped down the back stairs and out into the night. The alley was dark, lit only by the spill of light from nearby buildings. She kept to the shadows, moving as quickly as she dared. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The old mission was on the eastern edge of Yuma, a crumbling adobe structure that had been abandoned years ago. As Willa approached, she saw Owen waiting with 2 horses, one of them laden with supplies. "You made it," he breathed, relief evident in his voice. "I did." Willa held up the carpet bag. "This is everything I own in the world." Owen took the bag and secured it to one of the horses. "Then let us make sure your world gets a whole lot bigger." He helped her mount, and then swung up onto his own horse. "We ride north first, toward California, but then we will cut east through the mountains. It will throw anyone off our trail." They set off at a steady pace, not so fast as to draw attention but quick enough to put distance between themselves and the Golden Rose. Willa kept expecting to hear shouts behind them, to see Frank and his men bearing down on them, but the night remained quiet. It was only when Yuma had disappeared behind them, and they were surrounded by the vast emptiness of the desert, that Willa finally allowed herself to believe they had actually done it. She was free. After 3 years of captivity, she was finally free. Owen looked over at her, his face barely visible in the moonlight. "How are you doing?" "I am terrified," Willa admitted, "and exhilarated, and I think I might be sick." Owen laughed, a warm sound that eased some of her tension. "That seems about right, but Willa, you were so brave back there." "I did not feel brave. I felt like I was going to faint the entire time. Bravery is not the absence of fear, it is acting despite the fear." Owen reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. "You did that. You chose to bet on yourself on us. That takes courage." They rode through the night, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. Owen had thought of everything: food, water, blankets. He led them along paths that avoided the main roads, using his knowledge of the territory to keep them hidden. As dawn broke over the desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they finally stopped to make camp in a small canyon sheltered by red rock walls. Owen helped Willa down from her horse, and she stumbled slightly, her legs cramping after hours in the saddle. "Easy," he said, steadying her. "You did well for your first long ride." "I feel like I will never walk normally again," Willa groaned, rubbing her thighs. Owen built a small fire and made coffee while Willa unpacked some of the dried meat and hard bread he had brought. They ate in silence, both too exhausted for conversation. When they finished, Owen spread out blankets in the shade of an overhang. "Get some rest," he said. "I will keep watch. Owen, you must be just as tired as I am." "I will sleep later. Right now, I need to make sure we were not followed." Willa wanted to argue, but her body was screaming for sleep. She lay down on the blanket, and within moments, she was unconscious. She woke to the sound of voices. For a terrifying moment, she thought they had been found, but then she realized it was just Owen talking softly to the horses. The sun was lower in the sky now. She had slept for hours. Willa sat up, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles. Owen noticed immediately and came over, carrying a canteen of water. "How do you feel?" "Like I was trampled by a stampede," Willa said, but she was smiling. "How long did I sleep?" "Most of the day. It is almost evening now." Owen sat down beside her. "I have been watching the trail behind us. No sign of pursuit. Do you think they even know I am gone yet?" "Oh, they know," Owen said grimly, "but tracking us will be difficult. I covered our trail as best I could, and there are dozens of directions we could have gone from Yuma." Willa took a long drink from the canteen, then handed it back. "Where are we exactly?" "About 30 miles northeast of Yuma. If we keep this pace, we can reach the Colorado River by tomorrow night. Once we cross that, we will be in California." "And then what?" Owen was quiet for a moment. "I have been thinking about that. There is a town called Redding up in the northern part of California. It is near the mountains, lots of ranches and farms. I heard about it from one of the other hands at the Remington place. It is far enough from Arizona that no one will think to look for you there, but it is still a growing town with opportunities." "Opportunities for what?" "I am a dance hall girl, Owen. What kind of respectable work can I find?" "You are more than what you were forced to be," Owen said firmly. "You are smart, resourceful, and hardworking. You could be a shopkeeper, a seamstress, a teacher even. Or," he paused, his expression turning uncertain, "you could be my wife." Willa stared at him. "What did you say?" Owen took her hand. "I know it is sudden. I know we have only known each other for a few months, but Willa, I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I think I have loved you since that first night at the Golden Rose when you offered me a free dance. Marry me. Let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to go back to that kind of existence." Willa felt overwhelmed by emotion. "Owen, you do not have to marry me out of obligation. This is not about obligation," Owen interrupted. "This is about the fact that I cannot imagine my future without you in it. This is about the fact that when I think about building a life, you are the only person I want to build it with." "I love you too," Willa whispered. "I think I have loved you for a while now, but I was afraid to admit it, afraid that it was not real, that it was just desperation making me feel things that were not actually there." "It is real," Owen assured her. "What we feel is real." "So what do you say, Willa Harper? Will you marry me?" "Yes," Willa said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you." Owen pulled her into his arms and kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper as she responded. It was nothing like the forced intimacy she had known at the Golden Rose. This was real affection, real desire, and it made her feel alive in a way she had never experienced. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. We should probably wait until we reach Reading to make it official. Find a proper minister. I do not care about proper, Willa said. As long as I am with you, nothing else matters. They spent the rest of the evening talking, making plans for their future. Owen told her about his dream of having his own ranch someday, a small spread where he could raise horses. Willa talked about her childhood in Ohio, the bakery her mother had run, and how she had always loved the smell of fresh bread. Maybe I could open a bakery in Reading, she mused, if we could save enough money. I like that idea, Owen said. Harper's Bakery has a nice ring to it. Mallory's Bakery, Willa corrected with a smile. I will be a Mallory soon, remember. They set out again at dusk, traveling under the cover of darkness. The desert landscape was otherworldly in the moonlight, all silver shadows and mysterious shapes. Willa found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the ride, her fear gradually being replaced by a cautious optimism. They reached the Colorado River the following evening, just as Owen had predicted. The river was low this time of year, but still substantial. Owen found a shallow crossing, and they waded through with the horses, the water coming up to their knees. On the California side, they stopped to rest and dry off. Willa looked back across the river at the Arizona territory and felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had made it. She was out of Madame Celeste's reach. How do you feel? Owen asked, watching her expression. Free, Willa said simply. For the first time in 3 years, I actually feel free. They traveled north through California, following the routes Owen had learned from other cowboys and travelers. The landscape changed gradually, the harsh desert giving way to grasslands and then forested hills. Each mile took them further from Yuma and closer to their new life. It took them 3 weeks to reach Reading, traveling slowly to conserve their supplies and allow time for Willa to adjust to life on the trail. They camped under the stars, shared meals over small fires, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. Willa learned about Owen's childhood, his mother's gentle wisdom, and the lonely years after her death. Owen learned about Willa's family, the terrible night of the fire, and the desperation that had driven her to Yuma. One evening, about a week into their journey, they were sitting by their campfire when Owen suddenly stood up. Wait here, he said, disappearing into the darkness beyond the fire's light. Willa heard rustling, and then Owen returned carrying something cupped in his hands. I found these growing near the stream, he said, opening his hands to reveal a cluster of small white flowers. They are beautiful, Willa said softly. Not as beautiful as you. Owen knelt beside her and carefully tucked one of the flowers behind her ear. There, now you look like a bride. Willa touched the flower gently. We are not married yet. Soon, Owen promised. As soon as we reach Reading, I am going to make you my wife properly in front of God and witnesses. I cannot wait, Willa said, leaning in to kiss him. They reached Reading on a crisp November morning. The town was smaller than Willa had expected but charming, with neat wooden buildings lining a main street and mountains visible in the distance. People moved about their business, and Willa was struck by how normal everything seemed, how far removed from the world of the Golden Rose. It is perfect, she breathed. Owen grinned. Let us find the church first. I want to make an honest woman of you before we do anything else. The minister, Reverend Thomas, was a kindly man in his 60s who did not ask too many questions about their hasty arrival or lack of witnesses. He married them that same afternoon in the small church, with his wife serving as witness. Willa wore the same dress she had fled Yuma in, but Owen had bought her a small bouquet of late autumn flowers from a woman selling them on the street. Do you, Owen Mallory, take Willa Harper to be your lawfully wedded wife? Reverend Thomas intoned. I do, Owen said, his voice steady and sure. And do you, Willa Harper, Take Owen Mallory to be your lawfully wedded husband." "I do," Willa said, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Then by the power vested in me by the state of California, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Owen did, tenderly and thoroughly, and Willa felt the last chains of her past life fall away. She was no longer Willa Harper, dance hall girl and prisoner of the Golden Rose. She was Willa Mallory, wife to a good man and mistress of her own fate. After the ceremony, Reverend Thomas helped them find lodging at a respectable boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Peterson. The room was small but clean, with a real bed and fresh linens. It felt like luxury after weeks of sleeping on the ground. That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Owen held Willa close and whispered, "Are you happy?" "Happier than I ever thought I could be," Willa replied honestly. "Thank you, Owen, for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible, for giving me hope when I had none, for loving me enough to risk everything." "You did the same for me," Owen said. "Before I met you, I was just drifting, existing but not really living. You gave me a purpose, a reason to build something better." "We saved each other, Willa." They made love for the first time that night, a gentle and tender exploration that was everything the encounters at the Golden Rose had not been. This was about mutual desire and affection, about two people choosing to be vulnerable with each other. When it was over, Willa lay in Owen's arms and marveled at how different her life had become in just a few short weeks. The next morning, they began the work of building their new life. Owen found employment at a large ranch outside of town, the Double Creek, which paid decent wages and offered housing for married hands. The cabin they were given was tiny, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was theirs, and Willa threw herself into making it a home. She scrubbed the floors until they gleamed, patched the holes in the walls, and sewed curtains from cheap fabric she bought at the general store. Owen built her a proper table and chairs, working on them in the evenings after his long days at the ranch. Slowly, the cabin transformed from a bare shelter into a real home. Winter arrived, bringing cold rains and occasional snow to the mountains. Willa kept the cabin warm with a fire always burning in the hearth and hot meals ready when Owen returned from work. She had found employment as well, helping Mrs. Peterson at the boarding house with cleaning and cooking. It was hard work, but it was honest, and no one treated her like property. It was during one of those winter evenings, as they sat by the fire after supper, that Willa realized her monthly courses were late. She said nothing at first, afraid to hope, but when another week passed with no sign of them, she finally told Owen. His reaction was everything she could have wished for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to have a baby. Willa, we are going to have a baby. We do not know for certain yet," Willa cautioned, but she was smiling too. "I know," Owen said, placing a gentle hand on her stomach. "I can feel it. We are going to be parents." He was right. By the time spring arrived, Willa's condition was unmistakable. Her belly swelled with new life, and she glowed with a happiness that seemed to radiate from within. Owen was attentive to the point of being overbearing, constantly worried about her health and comfort. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," Willa laughed one afternoon when Owen insisted on carrying her over a small puddle. "I know, but I cannot help it. You and this baby are the most precious things in my life." Their son was born on a warm June evening in 1884, with Mrs. Peterson serving as midwife. The birth was long and difficult, but when Willa finally heard her baby's first cry, every moment of pain was forgotten. Owen was there throughout, holding her hand and whispering encouragement, his own eyes wet with tears. "He is perfect," Owen breathed, cradling his son for the first time. "Willa, look at him. He is absolutely perfect." They named him James after Owen's father, and he became the center of their world. Willa had never known she could love something so fiercely, so completely. Every smile, every coo, every milestone felt like a miracle. As James grew, so did their fortunes. Owen's hard work at the Double Creek did not go unnoticed, and within a year, he was promoted to foreman with a substantial increase in pay. Willa started baking bread and pastries in their cabin, selling them to the boarding house and eventually to several other establishments in town. Her mother's recipes were a hit, and soon she had more orders than she could handle. By James's second birthday, they had saved enough money to make a down payment on a small plot of land just outside Reading. It was not much, only 10 acres, but it had a stream running through it and good grazing land. Owen began building their dream, a small horse ranch where they could raise and train horses for sale. Willa opened her bakery in town, a small shop on Main Street with a cheerful red door and her name painted on the window, Mallory's Bakery. It was everything she had dreamed of and more. People came from miles around for her cinnamon rolls, her apple pies, and the sourdough bread that tasted just like her mother used to make. Life was not always easy. There were lean times when the horses did not sell, or when Willa's bakery had fewer customers. There were illnesses and injuries, arguments and misunderstandings. But through it all, they had each other, and that was enough. James grew into a bright, energetic boy with his father's brown eyes and his mother's stubborn determination. When he was 4, Willa discovered she was pregnant again. This time, she gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, after the Golden Rose dance hall where their story had begun. "It seems wrong to name her after that place," Willa said, holding her newborn daughter. "Not wrong," Owen corrected. "That place brought us together. It was your prison, yes, but it was also where I found you. Without the Golden Rose, we would never have met. This way, we take something dark and make it beautiful." Willa supposed he was right. And baby Rose was beautiful, with golden hair and a sweet temperament that contrasted sharply with James's boisterous energy. The years passed in a blur of work and love and family. Owen's ranch grew slowly but steadily, gaining a reputation for quality horses. Willa's bakery became an institution in Reading, the place everyone went for special occasions and everyday treats. They were respected members of the community, known for their hard work and generosity. One evening, when James was 10 and Rose was 6, a stranger came to their ranch. He was a rough-looking man with cold eyes, and Willa felt a chill of recognition even before he spoke. "Well, well," Frank Sullivan said, his lips curling into an unpleasant smile. "If it is not little Willa Harper, or should I say Willa Mallory now?" Willa felt Owen tense beside her, felt him shift slightly to put himself between her and Frank. "What do you want?" Owen asked, his voice flat and dangerous. "Just thought I would let you know that Madame Celeste died last year," Frank said. "Cholera, nasty way to go." "I am sorry to hear that," Willa said, though she felt nothing but numbness at the news. "Are you?" Frank's smile widened. "She never forgot you, you know. Spent years looking for you, convinced you would come back. Cost her a fortune in detectives and bounty hunters. Guess she was wrong." "Was there something else?" Owen asked. "Or did you just come here to deliver old news?" Frank's expression hardened. "I came because I wanted to see for myself if the rumors were true. If Willa Harper had really managed to build herself a respectable life. And I have to say, I am impressed. A husband, children, a business. You have done well for yourself." "Thank you for the visit," Willa said firmly, "but we have nothing more to say to each other. Goodbye, Frank." Frank stared at them for a long moment, and Willa thought he might cause trouble, but then he shrugged. "Have a nice life, Willa. You earned it, I suppose." He rode away, and Willa sagged against Owen, relief flooding through her. I thought he might try something. He is not that stupid, Owen said. He knows that if he hurt you, he would have to answer to me. And this is California, not the Arizona Territory. He has no power here. That night, after the children were asleep, Owen and Willa sat on their porch and talked about the past. It was something they rarely did, preferring to focus on the present and future rather than dwell on what had been. "Do you ever regret it?" Willa asked. "Throwing away your savings to help me? Giving up your job at the Remington Ranch?" "Not for 1 second," Owen said firmly. "That money bought us this life. It bought our freedom, our family, our happiness. Best investment I ever made." "I was so scared that night we left Yuma," Willa admitted. "I thought for sure we would be caught or that we would not be able to make it on our own. But we did make it. We more than made it." Owen took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Willa, you are the strongest, bravest person I know. You survived things that would have broken most people, and you came out the other side with your kindness and compassion intact. I am in awe of you." "I could not have done it without you," Willa said softly. "You gave me hope when I had none. You saw me as a person when everyone else saw me as a commodity. You saved me, Owen." "We saved each other." Owen repeated the words he had said on their wedding night. "We will always save each other." As the years continued to pass, their ranch prospered and expanded. James showed a natural talent for working with horses, often helping his father train the young stock. Rose loved the bakery and would spend hours helping Willa knead dough and decorate cakes. They were a family, whole and happy, and every day Willa felt grateful for the life they had built. When James turned 18, he told them he wanted to join the cavalry. It was 1892, and the West was changing rapidly. Willa was terrified of losing her son, but Owen encouraged him to follow his dreams. "He is a man now," Owen told Willa as they watched James ride away. "We raised him to be strong and capable. We have to trust that he will be all right." "I know," Willa said, wiping away tears, "but it does not make it any easier." Rose stayed closer to home, eventually marrying a young rancher named Daniel Wright and settling on a neighboring property. She gave Willa and Owen their first grandchild in 1895, a little boy they named Owen after his grandfather. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Owen took Willa on a trip back to Yuma. She had not wanted to go at first, afraid of stirring up painful memories, but Owen insisted. "You need to see it again," he said, "to prove to yourself that it has no power over you anymore." They rode into Yuma on a hot September afternoon, and Willa was struck by how small the town seemed. Had it really been this dusty and cramped? The Golden Rose was still standing, though it looked shabbier than she remembered. Through the windows, she could see new girls dancing with new customers, the cycle continuing endlessly. "That could have been me," Willa said softly. "If you had not come along, I would probably still be in there." "But you are not," Owen said, taking her hand. "You are free, and you have been free for 15 years. That place is just a building now. It has no claim on you." They visited the old mission where they had met on the night of their escape. It was even more ruined now, the adobe walls crumbling back into the earth. But standing there in the spot where they had taken their first steps toward freedom, Willa felt a sense of peace. "Thank you for bringing me here," she told Owen. "I needed this. I needed to see that the past really is behind us." "Always and forever," Owen promised. They returned to Redding and to their life, but Willa felt lighter somehow, as though a final weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was not a victim anymore, not a prisoner or a commodity. She was simply Willa Mallory, wife, mother, grandmother, baker, and friend. James returned from the cavalry in 1896, having served his 4-year enlistment with distinction. He came home with a young woman named Sarah, whom he had met during his posting in New Mexico. They were married that summer at the ranch, and Willa cried happy tears as she watched her son pledge his life to another person, just as she and Owen had done so many years ago. By the turn of the century, the ranch had grown to over 100 acres, and Willa's bakery had expanded to include a small cafe where people could sit and enjoy coffee with their pastries. They employed several ranch hands and 2 young women to help in the bakery. They were successful beyond anything Willa had dared to imagine during her days at the Golden Rose. Owen's hair had turned silver, and Willa's own dark locks were liberally streaked with white. They had laugh lines around their eyes and calluses on their hands from years of hard work. They were not young anymore, but they were happy, surrounded by family and friends and the life they had built together. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Willa with a gift. He led her out to a new building on their property, a structure she had assumed was another barn or storage shed. But when he opened the door, she gasped. Inside was a fully equipped professional bakery, complete with a large brick oven, spacious work tables, and shelves for storage. Natural light poured in through generous windows, and the air smelled of fresh wood and possibility. "Owen, this is too much," Willa breathed, but she was already moving through the space, her hands trailing over the smooth work surfaces. "It is not too much," Owen said. "You have been talking for years about expanding your business, about teaching baking classes and maybe writing down your mother's recipes. Now you can do all of that without being cramped in that little shop in town." Willa turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "How did I get so lucky? How did I end up with someone as wonderful as you?" "I ask myself the same question every day," Owen said, pulling her into his arms. 20 years, Willa. 20 years since we took that crazy leap of faith, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat." "So would I," Willa whispered. "So would I." They stood there in the new bakery, holding each other, and Willa thought about the long journey that had brought them to this moment. From the Golden Rose to this ranch, from prisoner to free woman, from desperate and alone to surrounded by love. It had not been easy. There had been hardships and struggles, moments of doubt and fear. But through it all, they had each other. Rose came over with little Owen that afternoon, and James and Sarah arrived with their 2 daughters, Emma and Grace. They had a celebration on the ranch with food and laughter and music. Owen played his harmonica, a skill Willa had only discovered after they married, and James danced with his mother while Sarah danced with their daughters. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, Willa looked around at the people she loved most in the world. This was what freedom looked like. Not just the absence of chains, but the presence of joy, of family, of a life built on love and mutual respect. "Speech," someone called out, and everyone turned to look at Willa. She stood, suddenly shy, but Owen squeezed her hand encouragingly. "I am not good at speeches," she began. "But I wanted to say thank you. Thank you to my husband, who saw me when I was invisible and loved me when I did not love myself. Thank you to my children and grandchildren, who have brought more joy into my life than I ever thought possible. And thank you to all of you, our friends and extended family, who have made Reading feel like home." She paused, collecting her thoughts. 20 years ago, I was trapped in a life I did not choose, with no hope of escape. I thought I would die in that dance hall, forgotten and alone. But then Owen walked through the door, and everything changed. He gave me the courage to fight for my freedom, and together we built this beautiful life. So tonight, I want to celebrate not just our anniversary, but the power of hope, of love, and of second chances. May we all be blessed enough to find someone who sees us truly and loves us completely. Everyone applauded, and Willa sat down, feeling both exhilarated and embarrassed by her own words. But Owen leaned over and kissed her cheek. "That was perfect," he murmured. "Just like you." As the party continued around them, Willa let herself relax and simply enjoy the moment. These were the memories she would treasure forever, the ones that would sustain her through whatever challenges the future might bring. The new century brought new changes. Automobiles began appearing on the streets of Reading, though Owen steadfastly insisted that horses were superior in every way. Electricity came to their ranch in 1903, a marvel that made Willa's bakery work much easier. The world was modernizing rapidly, but some things remained constant: their love, their family, and their commitment to building a good life. Willa began teaching baking classes in her new facility, passing on her mother's recipes and techniques to a new generation of women. She also started writing everything down in a series of notebooks, creating a legacy that could outlast her. Rose helped her organize the recipes, and together they tested and perfected each one. James and Sarah gave them 2 more grandchildren, twin boys they named Owen and Oscar, continuing the family tradition of names starting with O. The ranch was now in its 2nd generation, with James taking on more of the management as Owen aged. But Owen still rode out every morning to check on the horses, refusing to fully retire. "I will rest when I am dead," he told Willa when she worried about him overexerting himself. "Do not say things like that," she scolded. "You are going to live to be 100. "Only if you do too," Owen replied. "I am not facing eternity without you." They made it to their 25th anniversary in 1909 and their 30th in 1914. The world beyond their ranch was changing in frightening ways, with talk of war in Europe, but their corner of California remained peaceful. They had grandchildren in school, great-grandchildren beginning to arrive, and a business that continued to thrive. On a warm spring evening in 1920, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Owen turned to Willa with a contented sigh. 36 years. Can you believe it has been 36 years since we fled Yuma?" "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Willa said. "Other times it feels like a lifetime ago, a different life, a different person." "But it was you," Owen said. "It has always been you. The woman I met in the Golden Rose and the woman sitting beside me now, they are the same person. You have just been allowed to bloom." Willa thought about that. She was 61 now, her hair completely white, her body bearing the marks of a life fully lived. But inside, she was still that frightened 22-year-old who had taken a desperate chance on freedom. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it, Owen. We built the life we dreamed of." "We did more than that," Owen replied. "We built a legacy. Look at our children, our grandchildren. They are all good people, hardworking and kind. They know how to love and be loved. That is what we gave them." "That is what you gave me," Willa corrected. "The knowledge that I was worthy of love." Owen took her hand, his grip still strong despite his 70 years. "And you taught me what it means to be truly brave. You walked away from everything familiar, even though it was painful, because you believed in the possibility of something better. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me, the example of your courage." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. Inside, they could hear Rose and Sarah preparing dinner, the laughter of grandchildren playing, the ordinary sounds of a family at peace. "You have any regrets?" Willa asked. "Anything you wish you had done differently?" Owen considered the question seriously. "I wish I had walked into the Golden Rose sooner. Every day you spent there was a day too many. But other than that, no, I would not change a single thing about our life together. Not even the hard times. The year the drought almost destroyed us. The winter Rose was so sick we thought we might lose her. Not even those," Owen said firmly. The hard times made the good times sweeter. They taught us what we were capable of surviving, and we survived it all together. That is what matters." Willa leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him. After all these years, he was still her anchor, her safe harbor. "I love you, Owen Mallory. I loved you then, and I love you now, and I will love you until my dying breath. And beyond," Owen added. "If there is anything after this life, I will find you there too." They were called in for dinner then, the spell of the moment broken but not lost. As they sat around the table with their family, sharing a meal and stories, Willa felt a profound sense of gratitude. The dance hall had been her prison, yes, but Owen had been her key to a different life. He had not just freed her body, he had freed her soul, shown her that she was worthy of love and respect and happiness. And she had given him something in return, a purpose, a family, a reason to put down roots and build something lasting. They had saved each other, just as Owen always said, and in doing so, they had created something beautiful. Years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. Owen's health began to decline in his mid-70s, his joints stiff with arthritis and his breathing sometimes labored. Willa cared for him with the same devotion he had shown her all those years ago, making sure he had everything he needed, keeping him comfortable. James ran the ranch now, with his own sons learning the trade. Rose's Bakery, a second location opened in a neighboring town, was thriving under her management. Their legacy was secure, their family strong and loving. On a crisp autumn morning in 1925, Owen did not wake up. Willa found him lying peacefully in their bed, his face relaxed in a way it rarely was in life. He looked young somehow, despite his 76 years, and she knew he had gone without pain or fear. The grief was overwhelming. After 41 years of marriage, of never being apart, Willa felt like half of herself had been ripped away. But even in her sorrow, she felt grateful. They had been given so much time together, so many years of love and partnership. Some people never found what they had, never experienced that kind of deep, abiding connection. They buried Owen on the ranch, under an old oak tree where he used to sit and watch the horses. The whole community turned out for the funeral, testament to the man he had been and the life he had lived. Willa stood at the graveside, supported by her children, and said her final goodbye to the man who had changed her world. "Thank you," she whispered as they lowered his casket into the ground. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me a life worth living." In the months that followed, Willa slowly learned to live alone. It was not easy. Everything reminded her of Owen: the empty chair at dinner, the unused pillow beside her in bed, the silence where his voice should be. But she was not truly alone. She had her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. She had the bakery and the ranch, both tangible proof of what she and Owen had built together. On what would have been their 42nd anniversary, Willa made Owen's favorite meal and ate it at the oak tree where he was buried. She told him about the grandchildren, about James's successful horse auction, about Rose's plans to open a third bakery. She told him she missed him every single day, but that she was all right, that she was surviving. "You taught me how to be strong," she said to the headstone. "You showed me that I was capable of more than I ever imagined. So I am going to keep going, keep living, until it is my turn to join you. And then, my love, we will have eternity together." Willa lived for another 7 years, remaining active in the bakery and the ranch until the very end. She published her cookbook, a collection of recipes and stories titled From the Golden Rose to Home, which became a local bestseller. She held her first great-great-grandchild in her arms in 1931, a little girl named Willa after her. On a warm June evening in 1932, surrounded by her family, Willa Harper Mallory passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 73. They buried her beside Owen under the oak tree, and at her request, they inscribed her headstone with the words, "She was a prisoner until love set her free." Their story became part of family lore, told and retold to each new generation. The tale of Willa, the dance hall girl who dared to dream of freedom, and Owen, the cowboy who gave her the courage to reach for it. The story of two people who found each other in the darkest of places and chose to build a life filled with light. The ranch still stands today, run by the fifth generation of Mallorys. The bakery, too, remains open, though it has expanded far beyond anything Willa could have imagined. And under the oak tree, two headstones stand side by side, marking the final resting place of a love that conquered all obstacles, because in the end, that was what their story was about: not escape or adventure or drama, but love. The kind of love that sees potential where others see only damage. The kind of love that risks everything for another person's freedom. The kind of love that builds homes and raises families and creates legacies that outlast mortality. The dance hall had been Willa's prison, but Owen became her key to a different life. And together, they proved that no cage is strong enough to hold a determined heart, and that true love can overcome any obstacle, survive any hardship, and flourish in even the most unlikely circumstances. Their love story, born in desperation and nurtured through adversity, became a testament to the power of hope, courage, and two souls choosing each other against all odds.